All roads to the historical events surrounding the New Madrid earthquakes lead west, far west, to the banks of the mighty Mississippi. Our first stop is an area referred to simply as the Bend, a small piece of Kentucky surrounded by the river on three sides and Tennessee in the south. 17 hardy souls live on this swath of land today. In 1811, it had a front row seat to the chaos about to be unleashed. The meandering river landscape harkens back to times gone by, and to explore these events of 2 centuries ago, we need to revisit the events of that age and Kentucky's place in them. And who better to set the scene than historian of Kentucky, Dr. James Clotter.
Kentucky was the biggest state in the West, and it was one of the most important states in the Union up until the time of the Civil War. It was a state big in population, a state with the manufacturing it manufactured gunpowder. It had canals in the process of being built. It had rivers to travel down. It had agriculture. It was kind of a breadbasket already becoming for the West. And so Kentucky was an important state in its own right.
Joining Toby and I on our adventure is Dr. Kent Moran, an expert on the New Madrid earthquakes from the Center for Earthquake Research and Information at the University of Memphis. As he explains, in 1811, Kentucky was a focal point of the westward expansion of the country.
Kentucky, for instance, in 1811 was one of the most settled sections of the frontier. Louisville was a settled town with a newspaper. Frankfort was a settled town with a newspaper. You had a state capitol, a state prison. You had all the makings of civilization west of the mountains. They were frontiersmen, but they aspired to the civilization of the East. Up to the north of them, they had just finished an Indian war where Tecumseh had been defeated basically in the Indiana Territory area, where Kentuckians had answered the call of their country as volunteers and helped in that defeat. But they were frontiersmen, but they wanted to be civilized, but they were at a point in history basically where they were aspiring to do great things and would go on to do greater things.
These frontiersmen and women were also inquisitive about the natural environment around them.
You had Transylvania University where people were learning science and medicine and law and studying the area around them. People were exploring places like Mammoth Cave to see what minerals were in it, other natural spots in Kentucky to see what minerals could be exploited. They were trying to develop the Falls of the Ohio to make it navigable. These were people in tune with their times, trying to get ahead and to try to be modern.
At the center of it all in the western part of the state was the mighty Mississippi River, a gateway for commerce on the frontier.
The river at the time was the highway, just like that barge going by now. In those days, they had canoes and flatboats and keel boats coming down the Ohio River from Kentucky, coming down the Mississippi, going to New Orleans with their goods and selling them.